that was Jackie Dean. Mr Mallard didn't know. A member who is famous for two things. One, the member who thought that one should ban water, and two, the member in a public meeting with my colleague David Parker, whose in-depth knowledge of economics rivals Aaron Gilmore, who said the following, and I quote, "No, we're not going to borrow money. We're going to get it from overseas," she said. "We're going to get it from overseas." An economic theorist rivaling Aaron Gilmore. Well, let me say this. This is an interesting day today. This is a very prophetic day today, because on this day, the biggest crook in the blue chip scam, Mark Byers, got 75 hours community service. And on the same day that Mark Byers, the biggest crook in the blue chip scam, got 75 hours, a very wealthy man, a multi-millionaire, the National Party gave him $1,000 a week tax cut. Because he earns, in fact it would be more than that, he earns well over $1 million per year. And we know that under this budget now, if you earn $1 million per year, you get a $1,000 tax cut. $1,000 tax cut per week. So Mr Byers, thanks to Mr Key, I'm sure Mr Byers might send Mr Key a nice Christmas card saying, "Thanks very much, I've done my 75 hours community service." There were tears in court, according to the media today, but Mr Key was good enough to give him $1,000 a week. And there'll be a pensioner, my colleague Mr Mallard said, who got ripped off, who'll deliver the card to Mr Key. So it is a very, very prophetic day today. Mr Byers will have a lot to celebrate tonight as he contemplates his whole 75 hours of community service. And let's have a look at the budget. What do we got? We got inflation. The highest inflation, I believe, since 1990, 5.9%. And the truth is, and I really enjoyed the Maori Party contribution, especially Tiriana Turia's, where I said that she'd sold her electorate out, and a number of other people said the same thing. Well, they're so proud of this budget, the Maori Party, I say this to them. How proud can they be when in Rahui Kātane's electorate, 72% of her electorate, her constituents, 72% earn under $40,000 per year, and when you factor in GST and you factor in inflation, 72% of her electorate are worse off. And I say to Tiriana Turia, I'm sure she'll take another call to try and justify this, that in her electorate it's 73% who earn under $40,000 and are worse off when you factor in GST and when you factor in a 5.9% inflation rate. And Ms Kātanen and others have said, "Isn't it wonderful?" Somebody said, no, it was Ms Dean, "Isn't it fantastic," she said, "that those people who earn 70,000 plus get a tax rate of 33%. Well, here's the problem with that for the Maori Party who signed up to that today, that in Ms Kātanen's electorate, those who earn over $70,000 equate to 5%. 5%. In Ms Turia's electorate, it's even worse. They equate to 3%. So well done, I say, to the Maori Party. They've done a wonderful job of getting gains in this budget for their electorate, because what they've got is some hocus-pocus in a couple of prisons that Peter Sharples has put on the deck tonight and Judith Collins couldn't explain to the media, and they have sold out 75 to 73% of their constituents. I invite them, the weekend warriors that they are, to get up and justify that to their constituents in this House. Because if they are so proud of this budget, it will be very interesting during the campaign and the hui on the campaign trail when their constituents get up and say, "Hang on, I'm Ms Kātanen, I am one of the 73 who missed out, and those people and your colleagues in and outside the Cabinet voted for this, never opposed it, and ripped me off." That's what those constituents will say to the Maori Party. So I don't know whether it's mana enhancing when 73% of your electorate are worse off thanks to your vote and thanks to the fact that you are so proud of this piece of legislation and this budget. And then, of course, we come to the other aspects of this. The broken promise about the National Superannuation Fund. It was, of course, Mr English, who has a history of breaking promises when he was last in government in the 90s to our superannuitants, when under him their pension was cut 3 times, of course, said to them, "Oh, well, we'll suspend payments to the Cullen Fund. But when we get into surplus, and the budget documents show allegedly that will be 2016, we will activate funding again. Oh no, 2019. And I say to the National Party people when their leader and all of them went round the country with the second broken promise, which was no increase in GST, I invite them to front up on Saturday if they ever do a clinic, if they ever get off their backsides and go and talk to the 73% of people in some of the electorates, like the Maori electorates, if they ever go and meet those folks who are worse off as we speak tonight, I invite them to go and explain why it was that their leader and every last one of those individuals on there who got their backsides over the line in the vote and were elected on a false promise, two false promises, go to the grey power, I say to them. Mr Gilmore, I say, get off your chuff and go to your grey power and explain to them why he broke his promise, sir. Why he broke his promise. They won't know who he is, of course. They won't know who he is, but he might get in the door, and I'm sure they'll invite him, and he could justify the pay he gets by explaining to them why his leader said he wouldn't put GST up, why Mr English said he wouldn't mess with super, and he did, why Mr English said he would pre-fund super when they moved into surplus. Same with Nicky Wagner there, but you'll never get them fronting when it's bad news. They stand up in here, none of them will front. Well, I challenge them. Let's have a meeting. Let's call one. Let's get every person in their electorate. Let's get 10 of them, 5 of them, 3 of them. And Mr Gilmore, well, doesn't have a patch, of course, but where he lives, who's on the average wage, and after, of course, you factor in GST that they broke the promise on, and you factor in record inflation of 5.9%, let's get them in there and let's explain to them, or let's hear the explanation from them as to why they have ripped these people off and why they are worse off. The battlers, the strugglers, the people that are trying to provide for their family. And oh yes, and hey, I remember polls about budgets too, rolling out the 80%. Well, I say this, I've always held the view as a Member of Parliament that people are not stupid. And I know this about budgets, that you might win on the night when the flash bulbs are flashing and certain people are tripping over camera cords, but I tell you what, as the days go on and the pay packets are opened and the GST receipts are added up at the end of the week, I say this, the people ain't silly, and it's a very dumb and stupid politician in this House who thinks that you can hoodwink the ordinary folk in the street. I say to them, it's a simple equation. Get up and explain. Get up and explain why they're going to borrow $240 million per week for the next 3 years. Get up and explain why the debt track and the interest costs do not start even declining until 2021. Because if you look in the budget, sir, these are important numbers. But of course, they won't do that. They won't do that, and they will not explain, and they will not justify. They hide, sir, in their various patches and constituencies. They hide, sir, and they will not explain to anyone why it is they broke their promise. In my patch, Kate Wilkinson, a cabinet minister who occasionally resides in my area, was told by the Prime Minister, go out and sell the GST. Not a meeting, not a whimper, not a press statement, no nothing. The invisible woman never ever fronts the bad news. Well now, in my patch, sir, in my patch of Waimakariri, if I can quickly find it, 72% of my electors earn under $40,000 a year. 72% of my electors earn under $40,000 a year, and thanks to Kate Wilkinson, who sits in a cabinet, who voted for every last piece of this legislation, who never opposed it, who wants my job and everybody else's, she has sold out that quadrant of the electorate. 72% of my people in my patch are worse off as we sit tonight, because they didn't expect, of course, 5.9% inflation. And I invite Ms Wilkinson and Ms Wagner and Mr Gilmore and the other tumbleweeds over there to get off their backsides, get up in the House and tell us tonight why they broke their promise to the people of New Zealand and their constituents. Get up tonight and tell us why. The member for Tauranga, the Perry Mason in his own lifetime, I forget his name, why doesn't he get up? He loves doing the show on Breakfast TV and waxing eloquently about his golf handicap and how he got a gold membership of his local golf club. Well, he'll be able to afford one, of course, with his tax cut, but a pensioner in Tauranga won't, and a person under $30,000 in Tauranga won't. And I invite the next speaker to show some intestinal fortitude and tell